Hey guys, so yesterday we talked about text structures and we're going to kind of review what text structures are before we learn about our second text structure for the week. So we talked about how text structures refer to how the author organizes the information he or she wishes to present. So it's the way they organize the information. We talked about why it was important. It helps us comprehend what we read, and authors use text structures to organize their information so it can help readers learn and retain what they have read. Okay, so the biggest thing of why it's important why text structure is important, guys, is the first thing is it helps us comprehend what we are reading, and it helps us learn and retain what we have read. Okay, and so we talked about how there are 5 different text structures: description, sequence, compare and contrast, cause and effect, problem and solution. And so yesterday we talked about description. Okay, so I want you to take a moment to remember what was the text. I want you to take a moment to remember what you learned about description text structure. So take about a minute. Okay, so if you remember that it provides details or characteristics about a topic, and while you are reading, you ask yourself, is this describing something? And if it is describing something, then that text structure that you have just read is a description. And so we talked about signal words that authors use in their writing to help us identify that it is a description text structure. So some of those words could be, for instance, for example, in addition, to illustrate, moreover, another, furthermore, also to, most importantly, in fact. So you not all of these words are going to be in the writing. You may have a couple of them, you may have some. These are just some words that can help us identify that what we are reading is in the form of a description text structure. So today we are going to talk about sequence. So I want you to take a minute to think about sequence. Where have you heard that word before? And what does it mean? So where have you heard the word before, and what does it mean? So take about a minute to think about that. Okay, so sequence tells the order in which events occur or steps in a process. So as you're reading, ask yourself, is this piece of writing telling me the order of events or steps in a process? So basically, guys, it's the way when you are reading something, does it follow a specific order? Is it telling you a steps in a process? So order of events. Think about if you're reading about somebody's life, so like a biography, those would be events that occur in order. So it starts off with when they were a baby, young, when they were born, and all the way up until they get older. Or maybe it's about an event that happened in history. So maybe if we're reading about the Titanic, and it tells us the order of things that happened leading up to the very end when the Titanic sank. Or maybe you're reading a recipe and it's telling you the steps on how to cook something. So that would be sequencing, something that is being told in order. Okay. And so as you're reading something and you're thinking, is this piece of writing telling me the order of events or steps in a process? And if you say, yes, it is, then that is sequencing. Okay, that text structure is sequencing. And so, guys, you're going to see a lot of this in biographies, when you're reading about a historical event, when something has happened. It's going to tell you if you're reading a book, or maybe you're reading a passage about how something was made. So, for instance, today for your read aloud, it was the story about the ice cream. That was a sequencing text structure. It was telling you the order of how ice cream is made. Okay, so it started with talking about how they get the milk from the cows and how it's delivered to the factory and the process of how it's made to get to the end where you get to buy it in a store. So that is sequencing. So some signal words that you can find in a sequencing text structure, if anything that lists dates. So this is going to be talking about maybe a person's life or historical event. They're going to list dates. And so they're going to start with the earliest date all the way to the most present time. First, second, third, if they're ordering the steps in order. So they may say, first you need to do this, second, third. Words like before, after, next, finally, last, meanwhile. So you may not see all of these words. So if you're reading a book about a historical event, you're probably not going to see the words first, second, and third. You're going to see dates most likely. If you're like the book we had today, maybe you can go back and listen to it and see if you find any of these words in there. So these are just words that kind of help us identify if this text structure is sequencing. Okay, so today you'll need the handout that says sequence. And we are going to look at some examples of a sequence passage to kind of see what this would look like to help us understand what it looks like, so we can identify them later on while you're reading on your own. So we'll read one together and kind of look for some of these signal words, and then you'll have one to kind of look and read over yourself. All right?
Hey guys, so we are now doing the example passage for sequence. And remember, sequence is the order of events, or how the process of how something is made, or the order of how something is done. And our signal words to help us identify if what we are reading is sequence text structure are if there's any dates, if there are a list of dates, if you see the words first, second, third, before, after, next, finally, last, meanwhile. Okay, so these are going to be some clue words that are in your reading that is going to help you identify if you are reading a sequence text structure. So let's look at an example of what a sequence text structure would look like. Okay. You need the handout that says reading Thursday, and it says sequence at the top. And guys, this is just a graphic organizer that shows the steps. So 1, 2, 3. Or if we're putting things in order, this happened first, this happened next, this happened last, or this happened first, this happened second, this happened third. Okay. So let's look at the passage on the left. George Herman Ruth was born February 6, 1895. He learned to play baseball at the St. Mary's School for Boys. He was so good that one of the monks at St. Mary's invited Jack Dunn to come watch George to play in 1914. Jack Dunn owned a major league baseball team. Mr. Dunn offered George a job after watching him play for just 1 hour. His new teammates started calling George Jack's newest babe. From that point on, George was known as Babe Ruth. Dunn sold him to the Boston Red Sox, where he played for 5 years. In 1919, he was sold to the New York Yankees. 1 year later, he set a home run record when he belted 54 home runs. In 1927, he blasted 60 home runs. Babe Ruth helped the Yankees win the World Series 4 times. When he retired from baseball in 1935, he held 56 records. Okay, so let's look. Let's highlight or circle. So if you have a highlighter, grab it. If not, you can get a pencil. And let's see if we see any signal words that that would help us understand that this is a sequence. Now remember, a list of dates.
Teachers, at this time we have.
Sorry about that. So if it has a list of dates, now it has to be more than one dates, you know, that maybe help explain it, the like their life and the different things that happened. And then of course we have our words like first, second, third, before, after, next, finally, last, meanwhile. So let's look over here. Now we do have dates. So it starts off that he was born in 1895. It talks about how Jack Dunn came and watched him in 1914 play baseball. It also talks about how in 1919 he was sold to the New York Yankees, and then in 1927 he had 60 home runs, and now he retired in 1935. Okay, so those are all words that can help us with if this was a sequence, or help us identify that this is a sequence text structure. So now what they want us to do is describe below what makes this a passage with a sequence text structure. So why is this passage a sequence text structure? Okay, so I want you to think about that. Why is this passage a sequence text structure? Okay, so this paragraph or passage describes, now don't get this confused with description text structure, describes in chronological order. Guys, chronological order means chronological order. Let me think about that. So chronological order means it's in order from what happened first all the way to the end. So it's in chronological order. So that this passage describes in chronological order the important points in Babe Ruth's life related to baseball. So it's only the important parts of his life when it came to baseball. Okay. So this passage describes the chronological order. Guys, chronological order, sequence, they mean the same thing. They're like synonyms, okay? The important parts in Babe Ruth's life related to baseball. Okay. So now what I want you to do is you're going to read this passage over here. You're going to do the same thing that we did. You're going to highlight any signal words you read. So remember, our signal words are on the front. You can highlight them or you can circle them. And then describe below what makes this a passage with a sequence structure. So kind of like we did over here. All right, guys.